This is the NZXT Capsule, a softwareless plug-and-play USB-C microphone for streamers that, for me, leaves a lot to be desired. In this video, I'm going to show you around, show you how it sounds, and how it compares to Elgato's Wave 3, and give you my thoughts on it. So let's jump in and get started. The Capsule is a reasonably large microphone, both in its main body and on its stand, and especially when you put it next to a Wave 3. One of the main features that NZXT is shouting about with this mic is the quick release stand, which has a little button on the back, so all you do is push it in, pull it free, and that's the microphone off its stand. It comes with a little cover to cover over the gap that's left in the body, which you can slide on, although this is just a friction fit. So if you do want to remove this, you do have to kind of claw at it to pull it off, rather than putting it back on the stand, which just clicks into place. Looking at the bottom face, you'll find a USB-C port, which is the primary communication between this and your PC. You also have a 1/4-inch thread, which is used for mounting this to a boom arm, including mounting it to the boom arm that NZXT is planning on launching pretty soon after this microphone is out. And you'll also find a 3.5mm headphone jack for monitoring the microphone's audio. On the front, you have two endlessly scrolling, non-stepped or notched dials. The top one controls the microphone itself's gain, and if you push down on it, then you get a tactile click to mute the microphone. The bottom dial is also an endlessly scrolling and smooth wheel, but that one is to control the headphone output volume. You do also have an LED ring around the bottom, which shines white when the microphone is plugged in and working normally, or red when the microphone is muted. While you can't see much inside, NZXT says that the 25mm cardioid pattern capsule that's inside this thing is internally shock mounted, also comes with apparently a broadcast and stream ready internal pop filter, which is also nice, and you also have a 24-bit 96kHz analog to digital converter to convert that audio into the digital signal it sends out via the USB-C port. Now, all of that is well and good, but how does this thing actually sound? Well, let me jump to my streaming setup and I'll show you. I'm now recording with the NZXT Capsule, but I'm also simultaneously recording with the Elgato Wave 3, which means that I can chop and change between them in editing, although I'll let you know with a note on screen as to which you're listening to so that you know and can compare them yourself. With that said, the NZXT mic offers a pretty clear and pretty crisp listening experience. It's relatively true to life, has a pretty good range, although I would argue it might pick up the higher pitched S's and the hissing sounds maybe a little more than I would like, but in the grand scheme of things, it offers a very acceptable level of audio quality. You could argue that it picks up more background noise than perhaps I would like, especially since these are meant to be used in a gaming scenario where they're likely going to be very close to gaming PCs that are making even more noise than my PC is right now. Here's a listen to the background noise level. With that said, the Elgato Wave 3 also picks up a very similar amount of background noise, so I'm not sure that that's a problem with the NZXT mic as much as it's pretty much standard. Have a listen to the Wave 3's background noise. If I'm being honest, listening to these clips back to back, I can't say that I can notice a significant quality difference between the two. In theory, at least on paper, the NZXT Capsule's 25mm capsule should offer, in theory, better audio quality than the 17mm capsule in the Wave 3. But like I said, in practice, I'm having trouble to discern much, if any, differences between them. Add to that the fact that these are meant to be used for gaming and streaming, where you're going to be playing your game audio and music on top of this, these audio qualities, and so I can't say that any minute differences that there may be are all that big of a deal. I'd be happy with either of these in terms of their audio quality, and I'd be happy to say they're relatively equal. One thing that's not equal though is their feature sets. Specifically, that the biggest thing for me in terms of day-to-day usability of these is in their mute buttons. The Elgato mic has a capacitive mute button, which all that requires you to do is gently tap on the top of the mic. You hear no sound from you touching the mic or muting it at all, and it even has a nice fade in and out to the audio so that it's a little less harsh on the ears. Here's what that sounds like when you unpress it. You hear next to no noise, but you get just that nice subtle transition. Whereas on the NZXT mic, because it's a physical tactile button, you have to not only hold the mic, which you'll hear me rubbing on the surface, but you also have to press the clicky tactile button, and it's quite common for you to hear the button being pressed and unpressed as well. Here's what that sounds like if I'm unmuted. There's a good chance that you heard me clicking the button on top of me fiddling around trying to hold the thing to push the button. And what's even worse is that because the dial is smooth with no notches, endlessly scrolling, and you have no visual indicator for the audio, I could have actually changed the audio level while pressing that button, and unless I'm keeping an eye on OBS, I would never know. On top of the mute button, there is a couple of other differences that are features that the Wave 3 offers that, by virtue of NZXT choosing a simplistic, easy design, it doesn't offer. Things like Clip Guard, which is a feature where the microphone is recording two separate levels of audio simultaneously and will instantly switch over to the lower one should you get too loud to prevent the audio from clipping and generally sounding pretty terrible. Obviously, that's not something that the NZXT mic offers. And on top of that, there's just the wavelength software from Elgato, which NZXT would call a complication and terrible, but in reality, it's quite a useful feature to be able to have essentially a full virtual mixer for all of your audio to split out things like your game audio and your stream music into separate sources where you can mute them individually rather than just running it all through the desktop audio source in OBS or whatever your streaming program is. One final other, I suppose, nitpick is something I already mentioned with the volume dial. On the Wave 3, you have 8 little dots that show you what volume level the microphone is set to, the headphone output, and even the crossfade between the two, so you can easily glance down or at a glance know that your microphone is at least roughly at the right level, and if it's not, you can really quickly set it to where you know it should be. On the NZXT mic though, these dials offer no visual feedback, and on top of that, you can't even just plug in headphones and listen to the audio because the headphone dial is also offers no feedback, so you wouldn't know if it's just the headphone audio that's low or the microphone. The only way you can check what output level this is at is by looking in your streaming software every single time you go to stream. You would need to check that to make sure that it's not been reset accidentally or just budged in the wrong direction, and that's something that's really frustrating that could have been implemented, and even as something as little as just changing the color of the LED based on what volume level it's at so that you know at least roughly at a glance that it's the right sort of shade and that you would at least need to check if it's the wrong color. A lot about this mic confuses me. I mean, they are so proud of this whole quick release connection and mechanism that on the comparison chart that they included in one of the reviewer's guide files they sent me, it's the only unique feature they list. And yet, for the boom arm that they're planning on making, at least according to the manual that they included, they're not using this as the attachment method. You have to use not only the threaded adapter on the bottom, like any other boom arm you could go and buy, but you actually have to use this 1.25 inch long adapter or extender to change it from 1/4 inch to 3/8 to screw onto their own boom arm. Like, One, why would you buy theirs? And two, why do I want to extend the already fairly long length of this by another 1.25 inches and give it a very tiny failure point if you ever happen to accidentally hit this and, snap that thread off? It's just, I really don't understand. Oh, and a quick note on that comparison chart. They list the HyperX Quadcast gaming microphone as not game or stream focused. What? Also, I would say that it's pretty disingenuous to be comparing to the Razer Siren X emote, which is a sort of special edition version of the Siren X that has an RGB LED matrix inside it for little, emotes to show up on. But as far as I can tell, the emote version in terms of the microphone isn't physically different to the standard Siren X, which conveniently has a much lower MSRP of just $99.99 and is actually on sale for $79.99 instead. It's also even more disingenuous to list the Siren X emote, or even standard Siren X, as a 44.1 kilohertz microphone, as that's the minimum that it supports. The maximum it supports is 48, so why didn't they bother to list that? Another point of confusion is the insistence on simplicity, which ironically just causes more confusion. Take the stand, for example. They said that this is a simplified and no-fuss design, and yet, if you want to stop it from just randomly rocking around, well, you have to use these absolutely tiny and literally finger-shredding lock nuts to hold it in place. And even when you do, it's still incredibly light to move around, and even a gentle tug of cables can make it move and change positions. Oh, and that's another thing. Because all of the I/O, like the USB-C connector, is on the bottom, due to this swinging pivot design, if your cable gets any way trapped at any point when you go to pull it forward, or if you go to just pivot it backwards, the cable wants to snap at the connector head. What sort of design is that you would include this pivoting style and then not put the connectors on the back like Elgato's Wave 3 does, which means that when you go to pull it, you're at very least just pulling on the cable itself, and if the cable's snagged, it will just unplug itself rather than literally wanting to snap itself in half. From reading their reviewer's guides, this sounds like the sort of product that was designed by a boardroom meeting where a director said, we want to start selling a streaming microphone and it should sound good and be unique so that it can fit in the market. And the rest of the team came up with simple as the USP and ran with that. The reviewer's guide is chocked full of painful inside-the-box marketing terms like pilot error and truly plug and play, and that was our true north in the development of this product. All in the same bullet point. I can't figure out why you would buy one of these for $129.99 US when you could go and buy a Razer Siren X for, at the moment, just $79.99 instead. And that's an even more focused hypercardioid pickup pattern, is also internally shock mounted and pop filtered, is a much physically smaller and more compact unit, and is also plug and play. Or if you wanted a more feature-rich experience, you can go and buy Elgato's Wave 3, which, while is around $20 more, offers the capacitive mute, better mounting for the I/O, and actually, I would argue, better mounting for the whole unit, plus you can go and buy a proper shock mount and external pop filter for it if you want to, and it has the features like clip guard and the Wavelink software. While the Capsule offers perfectly good audio quality, it's kind of everything else around that means it just doesn't make sense for me as a product that I guess I would want to recommend. Even the build quality, which on its face seems like a nice value add over Elgato solution, which is primarily plastic minus its sort of grills. This is all metal with a rather heavy stand metal body, but even that is undercut by things like the mute and gain dial being incredibly loose, so much so that as I rattle it around, you can probably hear it clicking around in there. Stuff like that, stuff like the tiny little plastic wheels that make it almost impossible for this thing to, pivot around or at least stay relatively fixed. It does hold itself in place, but it's very light to move. That sort of stuff just undercuts what would be already a very unfeature-rich experience. That's the cost of going with this ultra-simple solution. It feels very much like the Apple school of product development, where you offer kind of the bare minimum and then pretend that that's actually a feature that people should be, well, paying more for, at least comparing to the Razer Siren X. And so I can't understand who would buy one of these unless straight up aesthetics or brand loyalty are that important to you. I can see this being a good product with some fairly major revisions. I would say that the internal hardware, albeit the internal shock mounting clearly isn't that great if you can hear me rustling on the body to press the mute button, but in the grand scheme of things, the capsule and the processing are perfectly fine. It's just the rest of the package that currently doesn't add up and could do with some refinement and maybe a version 2. But with that said, those are my thoughts, and I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. Is this a mic you'd pick up yourself, or would you rather get something like the Wave 3 or the Siren X instead, or maybe just stick with your headset mic? Feel free to let me know in those comments down below, and drop any questions you have down there too. If you want to pick up, or probably more likely check out pricing on the NZXT Capsule, especially when we watch this, take a look at the top link in the description down below. That's an Amazon affiliate link that will take you to your local Amazon store where you can see all that good stuff, and I'll even leave links to the Elgato Wave 3 and the Razer Siren X down there so that you can compare and again see the pricing between them when you watch this. If you want to stay up to date on these videos, you can do that by hitting that subscribe button and turning the bell notification icon on, or following me on Twitter if that fails, which sometimes it does. Or you can support the channel in a load of ways. You can do it directly by that YouTube join button for access to our Money Mid Discord chat, sponsor-free videos, and some cool emojis to use in the comments and on our live streams. Or you can do that directly on Patreon instead, if you'd prefer. You can also pick up hoodies or t-shirts like this one, there's a link to that in the description, as are a load of other affiliate links for places like Overclockers UK, Humble Bundle, Streamlabs OBS, and a whole load of other stuff, VPN options too, so feel free to take a look at those. I'll leave some more videos on the end cards, probably the Elgato Wave 3 review if you want to see that one. And otherwise, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, we'll see you on the next video.